Detroit, 1973. The air inside Cobo Arena crackled with anticipation as James Harrison paced the locker room floor, his boxing gloves already laced tight. At 27 years old, Harrison was a respectable heavyweight with 17 wins and 4 losses to his name, nowhere near championship caliber, but good enough to secure this exhibition match against Muhammad Ali. It should have been the highlight of his career. Instead, James felt only dread. "I couldn't stop shaking," James recalls now, sitting in his modest Chicago apartment surrounded by faded newspaper clippings and a single framed photograph of himself standing beside the greatest. It wasn't just fighting Ali that terrified. Me. It was knowing that I was about to be humiliated in front of my hometown, my family, my young son. The exhibition match had been arranged as a charity event for a local children's hospital. For Ali, it was one of dozens of similar events he participated in during his 3-year exile from professional boxing. For James Harrison, it represented both opportunity and potential catastrophe. Everyone knew Ali was playing with opponents. In these exhibitions, James explains, his weathered hands resting on his knees. He'd dance around, put on a show, maybe let the local boy land a few punches to give the crowd their money's worth. But he could end it whenever he wanted. And I'd heard stories about what happened if you tried to actually hurt him. If this story has already made you feel something, no matter how small, don't leave without giving back. Comment and tell me where you're watching this video from and subscribe to the channel. As James waited for his entrance, a locker room attendant delivered a message. Ali wanted to speak with him before the fight. Confused and even more nervous, James followed the attendant down a narrow corridor to Ali's private dressing room. He expected to find the champion surrounded by his entourage, loud and boastful as he appeared on television. Instead, Muhammad Ali sat alone, eyes closed in what appeared to be meditation. He didn't open his eyes at first, James remembers. He just said, "Take a seat, brother." His voice was different than what you heard in the interviews, softer, more thoughtful. I sat down across from him, feeling completely out of place. When Ali finally looked at him, James was struck by the intensity in his eyes. He asked me about my family, my background, not just polite questions. He really wanted to know. I told him about growing up in Detroit's East Side, about my 5-year-old son who idolized him, about struggling to make ends meet between fights. I don't know why I told him so much. Something about him made you want to be honest. Before James could ask why Ali had summoned him, the champion leaned forward and said something that caught him completely off guard. "I know you're scared, brother, but fear is a gift if you know how to use it." James was stunned into silence. Ali continued, "Tonight isn't about winning or losing. It's about showing your son what courage looks like. And courage isn't not being afraid. It's being afraid and stepping into the ring anyway." As James left to prepare for his entrance, Ali called after him, "Give them a real fight, Harrison. I won't make you look bad. Just show them who you are." The crowd roared as Muhammad Ali made his entrance, dancing and weaving down the aisle in his signature style. James Harrison followed minutes later to polite, if unenthusiastic, applause. Local boy he might be, but everyone had come to see the deposed champion, the man who had sacrificed his title for his principles. "I spotted my son in the 3rd row," James says, emotion still evident in his voice nearly 50 years later. 5 years old, wearing an oversized Ali t-shirt, sitting next to my wife. That almost broke me. My own son wearing the other man's name while I was about to face him. The first round began predictably. Ali danced, occasionally flicking out his legendary jab, but mostly putting on a show for the crowd. James, still remembering their conversation, fought cautiously, but with purpose. By the second round, something unexpected happened. James landed a solid right hook that momentarily stunned Ali. The crowd gasped, James recalls. I think they were more shocked than Ali was. For a split second, I saw something flash in his eyes. Respect, maybe. And then he nodded, just slightly, as if to say, "Good one." What happened in the third round would change James Harrison's life forever. As they circled each other, Ali suddenly dropped his hands and beckoned James forward. "Come on. Show me. What you got?" he said, loud enough for the front rows to hear. Confused but determined, James pressed forward, throwing a combination that Ali easily evaded. I remember thinking, "He's going to counter and knock me out now," James says. Ali had me in perfect position. I was off balance, my guard was down. Any boxer could see I was vulnerable, let alone the greatest heavyweight in the world. Instead of delivering the knockout blow, Ali stepped back and spoke again, this time so only James could hear. "Your son is watching. Show him who is father." Really is. Something shifted in James at that moment. It wasn't about beating Ali anymore. That was never going to happen. It was about showing my son that I belonged in that ring, that his father wasn't afraid to stand toe-to-toe with greatness. For the remainder of the round, James fought with renewed purpose. He didn't land any significant blows, but he didn't back down either. Ali continued to fight defensively, occasionally throwing jabs that James managed to slip or block. As the round ended, Ali did something completely unexpected. He tapped his glove against James's in a gesture of respect. The crowd went wild, James remembers. They had no idea what had passed between us, but they sensed something had changed. I went back to my corner feeling 10 feet tall. Between rounds, Ali did something unprecedented. Instead of returning to his corner, he walked over to James's side of the ring. The referee, confused, tried to direct Ali back to his corner, but the champion waved him off. The arena fell silent as Ali leaned over the ropes and began speaking, intently to James. "He told me to listen carefully," James says, his voice dropping to a near whisper as he recalls the moment. He said, "After this fight, people will ask what Muhammad Ali said to you. Don't tell them yet. Wait until you've done something with it." What Ali shared in those brief moments would remain private between the two men for years. James would only reveal the full conversation decades later, after he had indeed done something with it. But the immediate effect was visible to everyone watching. "When the fourth round started, I was a different fighter," James explains. "Not because I suddenly had more skill or power, but because my purpose had changed. Ali had given me something more important than boxing advice." The exhibition continued for all 10 scheduled rounds. Ali dominated, of course, but he never went for the knockout, never humiliated his opponent. Instead, he created opportunities for James to demonstrate his skills, to land enough clean punches to maintain his dignity. By the final bell, the crowd was cheering for both men. The judges scored it for Ali unanimously, obviously, James says with a chuckle. But after the fight, people weren't talking about him beating me. They were talking about how I'd gone the distance, how I'd fought with heart. My son was waiting for me outside the locker room, looking at me like I was a hero. Even though I'd lost, the post-fight press conference became the stuff of local legend. When a reporter asked Ali why he hadn't knocked out his clearly overmatched opponent, the champion delivered one of his characteristic poetic responses. "I could have turned out his lights, but I saw too much fight in his eyes. Sometimes a man needs to stand tall more than he needs to fall." What the press didn't know was that Ali had arranged to meet privately with James after the media had gone. In the empty arena, two exhausted fighters sat together in the stands, talking not about boxing, but about life, purpose, and responsibility. "He asked me what I planned to do after boxing," James recalls. "I told him I didn't know, that fighting was all I had." Ali shook his head and said something I'll never forget. "A man's fists can feed his family for a few years. A man's mind can feed generations." The years following the exhibition match were difficult for James Harrison. 2 more losses in the ring convinced him his boxing career was over, but he had no education, no other skills to fall back on. By 1976, he was working 2 jobs, as a janitor during the day and a security guard at night, barely keeping his family afloat. I was bitter for a while, James admits. I'd had my moment with greatness, and then life went back to being hard. I started to think what Ali had told me was just nice words, nothing more. Everything changed on a cold January morning when James, while cleaning the hallways at a local high school, overheard a teacher complaining about a group of students who were constantly in trouble, on the verge of dropping out. Something clicked. I remembered what Ali had told me in the corner. These kids in Detroit, they're getting lost. They need men who understand the fight they're in, not just the one in the ring, but the one in life. You know both fights, James. That's your real purpose. That afternoon, James approached the school principal with a proposition. Let him start a boxing program for troubled students. No pay necessary. He would volunteer after his regular shift. The principal, desperate for anything that might reach these kids, agreed. I had no equipment, no space, nothing, James laughs. We started in the school parking lot with jump ropes I bought at the dollar store and hand wraps I made from old bed sheets. But those kids showed up, and they kept showing up. Word spread about the program. A local sporting goods store donated used equipment. A community center offered space. Within a year, James was coaching 25 students, using boxing to teach discipline, respect, and perseverance. More importantly, he insisted they maintain passing grades to participate. I wasn't creating boxers, James explains. I was trying to show them what Ali showed me, that the real fight is with yourself, with the limitations you place on your own life. In 1978, James received an unexpected call. Muhammad Ali was coming to Detroit for an event and had asked to visit his program. I thought it was a joke at first, James says. Why would the heavyweight champion of the world remember me, let alone want to see my little program? But Ali did remember, and he did visit. He spent an entire afternoon with James's students, sharing stories, demonstrating techniques, and most importantly, reinforcing the message James had been teaching them. Ali pulled me aside before he left, James recalls, emotion making his voice unsteady. He said, "This is what I was talking about in the ring, Harrison. This is you showing your son who his father really is. This is you winning the fight that matters." With Ali's endorsement, James's program gained attention and support. By 1985, it had evolved into a full-fledged community center offering not just boxing but tutoring, job training, and mentorship. Over 4 decades, the center has helped thousands of young people graduate high school and pursue higher education or careers. Ali could have knocked me out in that ring, James reflects, looking at the photograph of the two. Of them, most people would say he was being merciful, but what he really did was much more profound. He saw something in me that I didn't see in myself, and instead of finishing the fight, he gave me the words I needed to start a new one. James Harrison never became famous. Outside of Detroit, few people know his name. But in his community, generations of young people have been touched by his work that began because Muhammad Ali chose words over a knockout. People always ask what made Ali the greatest, James says, smiling gently. They talk about his speed, his skill, his charm. But I know something different about his greatness. I know that when he had the chance to do what everyone expected, to knock out an opponent and add another story to his legend, he chose instead to lift up a man who needed lifting. That's what made him the greatest in my eyes. Today, at 76 years old, James still visits the community center that bears his name. His son, now 55, runs the daily operations. The walls are covered with photographs, James with Ali, James with his students, and countless young people who found their path because two boxers shared 3 minutes in a ring and a conversation that changed everything. Ali told me that fear is a gift if you know how to use it, James says, looking out at the boxing ring, where a new generation of young people are learning lessons that go far beyond fighting. He was right. My fear that night showed me what I really valued, my son's respect, my own dignity. When Ali saw that in me, he gave me the greatest gift one man can give another, the truth about myself. If you made it this far and felt every word, don't leave without subscribing. I tell these stories with my heart in my hands to reach people like you, who feel, who get emotional, who truly live. If this touched you deeply, give back, comment, subscribe. Come be part of this family with me until the next video.